Nottingham Forest smashed 7 past Brighton. Not only are they in the top 4 race and pushing for Champions League football, but they could also be in this title race until the end of the Premier League season. A sensational win for Nottingham Forest. Another masterclass from Nuno. Hit the like and the share button. Make sure you're subscribing. Let's go. This comment here, why are they this good? This game is just... Do you know what I love about this? There's no arrogance amongst Nottingham Forest fans. They know what they want, and they're glad they've got it. They want to win football matches. They want to try to get back to the pinnacle of the Premier League. But they also understand that it isn't as simple as just, we've got to play the nicest football. We've got to have the most fashionable names. You know, we've got to be trendy. We've got to be cool. None of that baloney. None of that crap. And I like that about their approach. They've gone about building a team with strong, technically gifted, pacey profiles. They've put it together and they defend well. They are hard to break down by and large. And they explode into the counter-attack. And what they have within that is some individuals who are becoming ever more clinical. Chris Wood with his hat-trick today. You've, of course, got Garnacho with a hat-trick of assists. Not Garnacho, sorry. Anthony Elanga. I was talking about Garnacho before I went live, sorry. Anthony Elanga, who's killing it. Gibbs White, who's been a sensational piece of business for Nottingham Forest. And a lot of people, including myself, when he went for about £50 million, I thought that was too much. He's been brilliant. What helps Nottingham Forest, to answer that original question of why are they so good? At the moment, what they're benefiting from is teams don't sit back against them. Teams aren't sitting in low blocks. They're not doubling up on their fullbacks. They're not giving them the ball and saying, well, break us down. We're going to put 11 men behind the ball. And they're riding that wave. There'll come a time next season, maybe the year after, if they make Champions League football, when they start buying better and better players because they have ambitious owners, that you may see things start to change. Teams will go, right, we're just not going to attack. You know, this happened to Leicester. Leicester won the league playing football very similar to this. Hard to break down, spring on the counter-attack, clinical player or two, won the Premier League. They lost some of those players, which may also happen. And then teams started to sit back a bit more against Leicester, and they weren't able to break them down and get the results. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. This is about the right profiles, the right manager, who have all embraced one another, and they're enjoying this ride together. And as a football fan, when I grew up, Nottingham Forest were a massive team, one of the best teams in England. They fell from grace for a quarter of a century. It is a beautiful thing to see them back. I wouldn't say where they belong because there's no entitlement in football, but it's great to see such a historic team back up near the top of English football, fighting for a Champions League position. Their heritage in the Champions League, for you youngsters, you won't understand it, is very, very big indeed. It was called the European Cup when they won it. But why are they so good? They're bought right. They have no arrogance of a fan base. Oh, no, I don't care if we're in the title race. The style of football ain't good enough for me. All that crap, none of it at this football club. Nuno, go and win us games. We'll build you a squad to get it done. And they're doing fantastically well. And as I always say, the Football Terrace, what do we focus on? We focus on that top 6 race. Who's going to be in it? The traditional top 6, yes, but who's fighting to get inside those top 6 positions? We cover a bit of Champions League, a bit of international football as well. But I watched that game. I was thoroughly impressed. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to have a little bit of a say on it because it's brilliant to watch. Genuinely, it's brilliant to watch and see. I love their football. I love the directness. I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Nuno. I used to work with him when I was in the banking industry, and he's a lovely man. I hated the way he was depicted. I despised the way he was treated when he was a Tottenham manager. I thought he was massively unfair. He was made out to be some sort of relic, some bum, someone that had no business being in the Premier League. And I always felt that that was a huge exaggeration. And yes, that was me being very personal about someone that helped me, because he did help me very much in my career. He did a lot for me. Maybe without even knowing he did so much for me, but he did. So I've got a bit of a soft spot for him. So very, very glad to see him doing well. Chris Wood, world-class striker's instinct, always knows where to be. There's a lot of strikers in the history of football that I've watched. Dean Windass was one of them who said this, that if he was in a team where loads of chances were created, he'd have scored more goals. Sometimes players don't get the opportunity to prove that theory. Chris Wood has been given that opportunity this last season or two. A team that's creating an abundance of chances, and he's showing that if you create them for me, I can score. And I think about my club, Man United. We lack a goal scorer in that 9 position. You think about Arsenal that lack a goal scorer in that 9, like a clinical goal scorer. I wonder where my team would be this season if Chris Wood played for us. I wonder where Arsenal would be if Chris Wood played for them. And for me, it's not just been a run of form where he scored a good amount of goals. He's been doing this for a while now, Chris Wood. And I'm going to say it. Look, Isak's better and Haaland's better, but I'd put him above right now, in the over the last 18 months, if you review it, he's above the majority of number 9s in the Premier League. He's been absolutely brilliant, and fair play. So I'm just updating the thumbnail. Fair play to that man. Thought this was for the traditional top 6. Guess the league is changing. That isn't what the Football Terrace is about, though. I don't quite like. We've evolved over time, and I think initially when I set it up, yes, it was set up about that. But if you actually go to our channel's homepage and read the description of the Football Terrace, that isn't what we've been talking about this, and our description hasn't been updated for a long time. I'll read it to anyone who's never read it before, just because I think it's sometimes important to do that. This is what the Football Terrace is. You know, we are. It says that each week we deep dive into the Premier League's top 6 clubs along with coverage from the Champions League, Europa League, international tournaments, and a dash of other leagues and teams too. That's what we do. And yes, it's a look into the Premier League's top 6 clubs, but I also think what's important is talking about teams that are overtaking them, teams that are threatening them, teams that are being more ambitious, playing better football. And you have to talk about that, because whether Man United, whether Spurs, whether Chelsea want to hear this or not, the likes of Villa, the likes of Forest, the likes of Newcastle are a threat to us in terms of winning trophies. And what's really important is league positions. They are a threat to that, because no matter how good you become, you know, if you don't make it into the top 4, you can't win the Champions League. And I kind of reject this notion that you shouldn't celebrate getting into the Champions League. If your team's trash and you got no chance of winning it, I get it. But in my younger years, nearly everyone who qualified each season for the Champions League from England could win it. And many of them did, and lots got to finals and would go deep into the competition. So that's why we cover it, Zane, because it's an important part of the top 6 journey. Absolutely. We won't cover every game every week. That's mainly because I cover a lot of football, and I also have children to look after, and I have family to be around, and I simply can't do it all. But as the terrace grows, you're going to see more and more and more of this. Face it, Terry, you only praise teams except City because of envy. But Alex, that isn't true. Alec, City have had more higher praise from me than any other team in the Premier League history since I've been doing this show. I've said they're the best team in the world, one of the greatest European teams of all time. Pep's one of the greatest managers of all time. I put KDB in the top 2 Premier League midfielders of all time. Haaland's the greatest finisher that the league has ever had. I talk about the constant disrespect that Aguero, Yaya, and David Silva get. I speak about how amazing Vincent Kompany was. I say that I was petrified of the 4-peat because it's one of the greatest achievements in the history of football. So for me, for you to sit there and say that I don't praise City, it's a lie, my friend. It's beyond the lie. Maybe I don't praise them enough for you. Maybe you want me to praise them. What more could I say than the things I've just said? Alec, come on now, my friend. It's crazy. Okay, I haven't done a video saying they're scary. That's because I've said they're one of the greatest teams of all time. A far bigger compliment. Go wobble your head, Alec. Go wobble your head. Elanga back at United? No. I say no. I'll tell you why I say no. He's doing brilliantly. I'm taking nothing away from him. I'm not sure if Elanga would deliver to this level if 11 men were behind the ball on a regular basis, if he was being doubled up on. He's given a lot more time and a lot more space on the ball playing at Forest, which I think benefits him. That may change. And if teams start to play low block against Forest and he continues to score, create, and drive his team forward in this way, I'd hold my hands up and say absolutely. But I wouldn't go back and have that revisionism at this particular point. Forest will be back in the Champions League. They could be. They could be back in the Champions League very, very soon. And they would thoroughly deserve it if that was the case. They've been brilliant this year. Elanga would set himself on fire before Man United. I don't know quite about that. United don't play full attack. Stop that, Terry. But that's what we're aiming to do, you see. And we've seen Elanga at Man United. As soon as Man United become a better team, teams will sit back against us. And teams still sit back against us now. And this is what I would say to your challenge. And I don't want to make this about Man United, but you guys are doing that by asking these questions. So let's keep it away from Man United, please. But how do I say this in the right way? Most weeks when we preview Man United games, when we're not playing the big boys, the dig at my club is, but how are you going to break down a low block? How are you going to break down a low block? You can't break down low blocks. So you're going to struggle more with that. That's why you do well against the bigger teams, because the smaller teams sit back against you. As soon as I say what I said about Elanga, no one does that. Which is it? Which is it, Alec? Which is it? Sorry, James. Which is it? One or the other. Forest will have done better in Europe than most teams in Europe. Though they have. Historically, Nottingham Forest have such a heritage in Europe. They just went away for 25 years and disappeared. They have got a great heritage. And there'll be a percentage of that fan base that will remember it vividly. And when they got promoted back to the Premier League, I don't know where the tweet is. I'd have to find it. But I said, this is, for me, was a brilliant day for English football to have one of the true giants of British and European football back in the pinnacle league. So, look, I love it. I don't like it when you've beaten us. I assume you're a Forest fan by your name, but absolutely brilliant what they're doing right now. Absolutely brilliant. Let's have a little look here. Forest, zero fear. Of course they have zero fear, because they have a system, a manager, players to play that system and work for the manager, and an owner who are all intertwined. They're in sync. They're together. And that togetherness is yielding these results. They are all singing from the same page. And you can just see that in every facet of the football club right now. And that has, I want to make sure I say this in the right way, that you can see in the performances, in the confidence. There's a camaraderie that's really helping them, in a togetherness. It's quite beautiful to watch, really. I hear you there, mate. I hear you. Get Chelsea City out of the Champions League and get real clubs like Forest and Villa back in it. Terry, United averaged 58% possession since Amorim came in. That includes City, Liverpool, Arsenal away. Why do people act like United played it? Because the problem is, and I don't want to get into any more United chat, the reason why people do that is because whatever we do, good or bad, people find the negative in it, and it's just boring. It really, really is. It really, really is. Let's have a look here. Forest are very good, but so are Bournemouth. Bournemouth are very good as well. Bournemouth and Forest have got very similar. They've got different managers, but they've got a very similar ethos to me, how I view it. Technically gifted players, loads of athleticism, loads of speed, loads of power, and no arrogance. The fan base accepts how they play. They don't sit there third in the league and go, yeah, but we're playing counter-attack football. I want more than that. Which means the media write negative stories, which means the manager and the ownership are put under more pressure. They just want to win, and they want to grow up the league. And for me, I've said it for years, I don't really care. That's not true. I want a particular brand of football at my club. But if it isn't my brand and we're winning, I don't care. I'm not precious about it. Too many fans of the traditional big six, top six in England, that too many of their fans are seeking this utopia that you may never get. You may never get, because we're so sort of entrenched as human beings in our own need for our own desires being gratified, as opposed to maybe accepting that not everyone sees the world like you. That's why both those teams are very, very good. No arrogance. And I love it. It's brilliant to see. Megatone here says, Forest are flexible in player roles across the team, fluid in formation change, excellent positional awareness, on top of efficiency in attack, conversion, and defensive scenarios. Do you know what's really interesting there? That's how Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had Man United playing, and nobody wanted it. And this is why sometimes what you have to do By the way, I think Nuno's a better manager than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So I'm not saying United should have kept him. But this is why when it comes to a brand of football, sometimes you just got to let it play out as opposed to, but that's not what the best are doing today, because it changes. If you look over the next 6 to 12 months, you are going to see Pep Guardiola become far more direct. Man, they're going to become a more direct team. They'll control the ball when they're leading, but they're going to become a team that plays more long balls or one, two, three passes to get into the box and score. That was being done by Ole back in 2020, 2021, and nobody wanted it. Football goes through cycles, though. I'm not saying Ole was an innovator, by the way, because that football existed prior to that as well. It just goes in cycles. And Forest are doing it at a time where it's yielding great returns, brilliant dividends, and it's fruitful, and everybody's loving it. But I also think having a fan base that are just happy to be where they are, understand the scenario they're in, have no arrogance, not big-headed, not full of crybabies. I think that whole thing really, really helps. It really, really does. Cop White says, big win today. It is a Liverpool kickoff in 10 minutes. I can't wait for the Bournemouth-Liverpool game. I think it's going to be a great one. I really do. Machiavelli says, I'm a Liverpool fan. I would love to see Forest make the Champions League. Yeah, so would I. I'd love to see them do it. You know, and if you look currently at just looking now at the Premier League table, excuse me, they're third. You've got Newcastle chasing, Bournemouth. Listen, if I could pick now, let's say the top 5 teams make it. I'd love Forest, Newcastle, and Bournemouth to be in it. It'd be amazing. It'd just be amazing. It'd be a great advert for the Premier League, and it would be a massive encouragement to other teams that are sort of considered mid-table, bottom-table half teams. Keep pushing, keep trying, get in that Champions League, then see what you can do. And with the TV money, it's a lot easier to keep players nowadays because you can increase their salary yourself. So yeah, I'd love to see that. Personally, I would. I remove Woods from my fantasy team, and he goes and scores a hat-trick. I'm going to speak about him a little bit later. You should be, yeah, he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. Forest are my spirit animal now. Terry, what's my view on Spurs? A club that needs to know its position. Yes, they have a big stadium and big income. But you know what I'm just saying here about Bournemouth and about Forest? There's no arrogance in their fan base. They understand what they are and what they're trying to achieve. Sometimes I think Spurs, as a collective, think they're Real Madrid, behave like they're Real Madrid, and then get disappointed that they're getting Tottenham-level outcomes. So I think if they lowered... People say you've got to have high standards, but I think you can also have standards that are well above your station. That's what I think of Spurs. Big club. I respect large parts about it, but there's an element. The stadium's beautiful. They make good money, but just sometimes I feel, and you see it almost every season, the big and the big and the big and the big, and then around this time there's this massive deflated feeling of, oh, it's gone wrong, innit? And then you see a lot of Spurs fans go, I'm never going to give it the big one again. I'm never going to get ahead of myself again. Just to sign 2 exciting players in the summer and for that process to start again and again and again. And where do I get this from? My dad, who's a lifelong Tottenham fan, who's 70 years of age, who bemoans to every Tottenham fan that behaves like that. He doesn't understand it. It's like, we're Tottenham and we should know where we are. He says, yes, if you beat a team on the day, have a bit of fun and a bit of banter, but sit down. So I'm just going based off what my dad tells me about his own club, because I respect my dad's opinion on it massively. So yeah, that's why. That's ownership, Terry. Yes, a big part of it is the ownership. Absolutely. Absolutely. What Spurs think they're Real Madrid? I'm talking about expectations and the way they talk, the way they consistently banter other clubs and talk people down. And I've heard the way some Spurs fans online, some Spurs journalists have belittled Chelsea and Arsenal in the last couple of years. And I just sit there and think, but they talk about it in a way which isn't, they're not talking independently and saying Tottenham is X, Y, and Z. And on the Chelsea subject, Chelsea are A, B, and C. They talk about it from a sort of a perspective of, look how bad they are. And they wish they were us. You know, look at, we're really cool. We're really good. Look at them over there. It's crazy to me. It's a crazy way to behave. And I think that type of behavior seeps into boardrooms and dressing rooms. I've always thought it. I'll always believe it until somebody can prove to me that the way we as fans behave doesn't seep into these areas. Till someone can show me that there's no evidence of that, I'll believe it. I really do. At least Brighton managed to keep Mitoma. Yeah, look, they're not going for a good time at the minute, Brighton. Doesn't change what I think of them as a football club. I still think pound for pound over the last 4 or 5 years, they've been maybe the best run club in England, pound for pound. We're talking here. But the last 2 games have been poor from their behalf. But you got to remember, they won their last 3 games prior to that. They were, I think they were unbeaten in their previous sort of 7 or 8 games prior to that and won 3 on the bounce. So yeah, they got a thump in today. Absolutely, they did, by a very good team. But it's people are really quick to want to like sort of shoot Brighton down. And I don't quite understand that either. KJ, how are you, mate?
Yo, I just witnessed some nasty work from Forest today. Flipping hell, man. What they did to Brighton was mad. And you know what? Shout out to obviously, first of all, my boy, Alanga. Anthony, I hope you're watching or come across this video. Keep smashing it, mate. I always believed in you. I always believed that with the right club, you'll maximize your talent. And you're doing that. So I love that. Shout out to Chris Wood. He has... I've not seen an uncle glow up like this in a long time. Like in terms of a player that's been seen as dead, washed, awful, not really that good. He's over 30 years old and he's absolutely killing it. And you know, fair play to the guy, man. Fair play to him, because many players right now, like he could easily have been like, oh, I'm washed now. I'm going to go championship because I know I can bag goals in the champs, you know what I mean? Or go abroad somewhere where he can be low key. Man keeps fighting for his chance to be shown as a top striker. And will he get a move to Arsenal now or Chelsea? No, but he's now cemented himself in Premier League folklore, in my opinion. One of those the streets will never forget kind of baller.
Yeah. And listen, my advice to a lot of these Forest players, genuinely, is don't leave Forest. I actually, because this works for you, and this is the advice. If I was Gibbs White's agent, Alanga's agent, Wood's agent, this works for you. You might, Gibbs White might, oh, United want me. I might go there. It's Man United. I get, you might see the prestige. Arsenal want me. But it's a different brand of football, different expectation of fans, a much more arrogant fan bases you would go to, and I'm including my own in that. With a different brand where teams treat you a little bit differently in terms of they sit back more. This is working for you. Stay, because this could be a beautiful 2, 3, 4 year period. Honestly, my advice to all of these players is stay and let your owner give Nuno more players that suit this system, more players that can sit on your bench, and then maybe a few players that you can improve on in terms of quality and speed and power. And who knows how far this can go. Like, my advice to every single Forest player is do not leave. Same as Brighton's players. So not Brighton, Bournemouth's players. Right, don't leave. Stay. I like Semedo. Don't leave. Semenyo, sorry. Don't leave. Stay.
Man, and is this is an interesting question for you, Terry, in regards to FFP. Is this a potential FU to FFP? As in, would now clubs potentially look at this and be like, you know what, screw it. We will just spend what we need to spend, and when we get better, we will deal with it then, you know, like, because obviously they had the points to the deduction, survive the league, and now they're doing this. I'm not saying it would definitely happen, or like they should do that, but I'm just wondering, is there in some teams' minds like, yo, if we just take the risk of a points deduction, we could become better?
To a degree, because Villa look like they're doing that by taking, listen, Rashford's on 300 grand a week, and they're paying about 80 to 85% of it, and they're very close to breaking the rules. But it depends how far over the rules you go. So let's say you break the loss barrier by £20 million, you might get a 4 or 5 point deduction. You break it by £400 million, you get, and then you're also in that debt. So I think teams will sail close to the wind as long as they think they won't go down. But where you got to be careful is if you spend it, oh, thank God we survived. Yeah, now you've got a 5 point deduction, you're down. So I think there's an element of truth to that. There's a comment here I wanted to go to that says, Terry, what do you think of this? Spurs could have been what Forest are now if only they didn't think so highly of themselves. But that's a great point about Nuno. Nuno came in and they wanted champagne football. They wanted beautiful, scintillating, high possession, pinning the teams back, sort of Barca-esque football. And that isn't what Nuno is. By the way, it isn't what Conte was, and it isn't what Jose Mourinho has ever been. I think when you get these types of managers, if that's the direction, and the club clearly tried to go away from what Poch was doing because 3 managers on the bounce were not like Poch. Now they've kind of gone back to it. And whatever you do, you should stick to a plan for a long period of time. But if Spurs fans would have embraced what those managers were, accepted what the football was, and then encouraged their club to buy players that make that work, yeah, they could have been more successful. Now, look, Forest haven't won a trophy, which is a big thing for Spurs. Forest haven't made the Champions League yet, absolutely. But if you're going to go down the route of a Nuno, then you've got to build a squad. You've got to build a team that can get the best out of it. But the fans, I think, have got to start being a little less arrogant. All of us, including Man United fans in this. There isn't a right and a wrong way to play football. There is on a preference level, but sometimes we just don't get our preferences in life. You know, it's the club isn't. You're not the only fan of the club. Do you know what I mean? There's millions of them. So there's a little bit of that in there. It really is. This year says, amazing that this club took a chance and almost went down with a point deduction. But look at them now. Wish my Arsenal had the balls like this Forest club.
Like Terry said, it's a difficult one because depending on how far over you go, depends how much the point deduction was. You know, say if Arsenal says, screw it, we're buying right now, we're going to buy Isaac. And we're going to buy, they bought Kvaratskhelia, and they cost 200 million euros to do, and they're over PSR and stuff. Like, we don't know how big that point reduction is. So them doing that to win the league is then counterproductive because you might win the league on points, but then get deduction, and then therefore you don't win the league. So you've just
or the following year, yeah. So I think you need to be mindful of it. You need to be mindful of it. You probably don't want to go out of your way to break the rules, like just directly break them. But I do hear you. AMT says, partly I think Brighton didn't respect Forest. This is a really good point. We would talk about this during the game. You know, I know you're friends with Elanga. You've met him. You know him. I feel that he's at the right club because most teams don't sit back deep against Forest at this particular moment. I'm not having to go at AMT for the comment. I don't like the phrase they don't respect Forest because it's almost like they look at it and go, ha, they do. I think it's more a case of, and maybe this will change if Forest keep winning, by the way, but I think sometimes there's this element of Arsenal had it when they first started that title challenge 2 years ago, where maybe in the first 6 months, teams were all still attacking Arsenal because they thought we can get something here. I think teams still look at Forest and go, I think we could beat you. So they're less defensive. They don't sit back as much. They leave less defenders back, and Forest just ruin you. But I don't know if the word is a lack of respect.
I think it's just more styles make fights in this game. Like literally, that's what it is. Like the Forest's style just outdid Brighton's, and like if anything, maybe the other teams don't respect Brighton. You know, like the Man Uniteds, the Spurs, and all the teams that they give Brighton give a hard time to. Maybe they don't respect them, and actually be like, we should need to sit back against them more because they're a quality team. So yeah, I don't think it was a lack of disrespect. I just think both teams had a game plan. One worked, the other one didn't, and they couldn't have a response for any changes. So, yeah, fair play to Forest, man. No disrespect to Brighton at all.
No, I completely agree. I don't think it's a disrespect. I think a lot of the teams in the top 6 always use that phrase against each other when we sort of do the whole, United are only winning at the minute because teams don't respect you, so they attack. I just, as you say, I think there's an element of truth to it. The wording is just a little bit like a backhanded compliment, really. Jay says football is beautiful, like chess. Every play style has its kryptonite. Forest style will always get something playing against teams who play like Brighton and Liverpool. Fulham versus Arsenal, Chelsea, etc. Yeah, Brighton, no matter who our manager has been, Brighton consistently are able to beat Man United and play us off the park. And then a week or two later, they can play someone else and not look as good. You are right. Styles make fights. There was a time where Bolton Wanderers used to always be a problem for Arsenal. Man United for many years had issues with Southampton away into the Letitia era. You always go through that as well, which is very true. And I wouldn't have ever said that was about a lack of respect. It's just a styles make fights. But look, I want to thank everyone who's tuned in. I want to congratulate Forest for their win today and their players. We're back live after the Liverpool versus Bournemouth game, and this match, this stream now will redirect you to that. So go and like it now. Make sure you get it bookmarked and make sure you're back at full time. Take care. Goodbye. God bless. And I'll see you all again soon. Peace.